my goal here is just to give a quick update on some of the things that we've been doing on the Revit, on the technical side, so on the template and the content. So I don't want to spend too much time. I'll get through it pretty quickly. We've got some other interesting stuff the guys want to share through this presentation as well. So let's move on. So basically, over the last 12 months, we've released a couple of new versions of the Revit template, as Shannon mentioned earlier this morning. But I just thought I'd start on this kind of giving a bit of a context of the progression and the different releases dates of the Revit template itself. So not to sort of go through that line for line, but you can kind of see the different issues per year. But on the right-hand side there, you can see, tried to kind of indicate where, along that progression, how we've tried to fit different things in. So obviously it started heavily mechanical side of things, but around about 2015, we went down the path of looking at branching out to the generic content. Obviously, we always had the manufacturer content as part of the initiative, as part of the subscription. But then we branched into the generic content path, and we'll discuss a little bit more of that as well today. And then being able to schedule that out with the shared parameters and that as well. And then in 2016, we really tried to start heavily focus on the E, I guess, the E and the P and the other disciplines. So we started doing some development on the electrical side of things. If you were here even last year, you would be aware of some of the stuff that we were doing around the cable trays, and there's more stuff that we can show you potentially that's happening in the background at the moment. But interesting to note there, or the important thing to note there is that partnership and that integration with PowerCAD. So we've been doing some really cool things, some really positive things with PowerCAD and developing the content to work and to integrate into PowerCAD as well. I'm going to talk a little bit more on that today, but also just be aware we've got some workshops happening tomorrow morning where you can come and see some of those workflows in action, which would be really cool. So particularly if you're electrical, come along tomorrow morning. I'll talk about that later. And then obviously ongoing development of the hydraulic and fire as well, that we were touching on that too. So let's keep moving forward. So just a bit of a summary, I guess, of what's happened over the last, the last 12 months. These are the sort of the key points, I guess. So as we said, a couple of issues of the template. We've got one that's about to be released pretty much this week as well. Generic content expansion. So we expanded the content, and we continue to expand the content. That's obviously the goal. It's obviously a demand, and we're doing it, but we're doing it in that workshop standardised process. So, but that's happening. We'll talk about a little bit about that. Shared parameters as well has had a bit of attention this year too. So there's some stuff coming out of that. Some reviews of the existing BIM-MEPAUS shared parameter file. To compare, but also add additional ones in as this new content, as electrical side, for example, comes into play as well. So there's some development happening there. The fabrication database has been developed quite heavily. Dave's obviously going to talk a little bit more about that as well. And then also, just a little teaser there, we've been working in the background on this on an API tool for Revit. So this is just a little bit of a teaser, being able to do things like annotation and automation of tagging and numbering and things like that. Okay, so we've got Adam from Bad Monkeys is going to come and show a little bit more of that at the end of this presentation. So stay tuned for that. On the generic content side, these are some of the just really quickly some of the items probably to note, particularly around the pumps. We've done a lot of development, and this is where the PowerCAD integration comes into it. So if you come along tomorrow, you'll see what is actually now possible with this pump content. And integrating with PowerCAD and being able to connect and then start to do all that sort of analysis and sizing and specifying outside of that. So that's very, very positive. Switchboards, variable speed drives, chilled beams. So we've got, these are the sort of areas that we're trying to focus on. Again, pretty much all this, well, not absolutely all, but pretty much the focus with the content that we're doing at the moment is the PowerCAD integration as well. So wherever there's power, obviously it's going to be consistent, okay, and it's going to integrate. So shared parameters, I guess, in just a little bit more detail. We've done some, we've identified some, I guess, not so much duplicates, but some areas where some namings are changed and things like that, and just consolidating some of the parameter namings across the disciplines. So that's happening, and there's a new release probably coming. It's probably pending. We're just about ready to do something in that area as well. So that'll be coming through soon as well. Again, to incorporate this electrical development as well. So just released, hot off the press. So this is just a little bit about the new what to expect in the new release of the template. And just as a side note, that's actually a that's actually a picture of Dave when he had hair. That's when he first started tinkering at setting up the database. He doesn't now anymore. So anyway, okay. So the new release. So we're looking at doing some legends for the other disciplines. So for those of you, I guess, who are using it, will be aware there's some mechanical legends and things in there. So we're looking at doing some stuff for the fire and hydraulic electrical to bring that sort of in line as well. So there's stuff there. There has been some work on some of the duct fittings, as there kind of always is in the background, and you know, lining that up with the fab side as well. So there's some few updates on that side as well. Standard tags for detailing. Again, that's going to kind of work with this tagging tool that I mentioned before as well. So there's some development in that area as well for both fabrication parts and for Revit families is to be noted there as well. And fabrication serves colour filters as well, so integrating the service, so the Revit systems kind of match with the fabrication services. So that's a few of the, I guess, the highlights of those updates. And then lastly, this will be me. I just wanted to, again, quickly promote tomorrow. So 8 a.m. Tomorrow morning, we've got two workshops happening on this side of the things with the Revit and the fabrication. So Dave's going to run in the Clarendon Room D with Andy Robbins, and a few others from Autodesk are going to be online as well, I believe. So that should be a really good workshop. And then also running through the fabrication database and some developments there. And then myself, I'm going to be in Clarendon Room E with Adrian Newman from PowerCAD. So this is where we're going to run through the Revit electrical workflow. So yeah, if you're electrical focused, but even if you're not, come along because it's going to be really cool. So thanks a lot. I think from there I will hand it over to Quoc. Just click it forward, yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Brennan. Yeah, thanks Shannon and AMCA for hosting this event. It's a great event. This is my first time. So what I'm going to be presenting to you guys is essentially a consultant's perspective, I suppose, on design and death of the draftsman. And I'll pause for dramatic effect. What I'm trying to say is the role is transitioning, and I think from the last couple of presentations, I've noticed that being part of the industry as well. And I guess typically a draftsman or drafting, we're trying to document, translate engineering information to something that's legible, readable, and can be used on site to build an end product. But with all the tools and software available, you know, these are only just listing a few. They also do other things, not just produce drawings. They analyze, they calculate, quantify. They can do QAing and processing and so forth. And the big one that we've been, I guess, noticing or seeing more is providing more options. You know, providing one layout of a particular plan is no longer acceptable anymore. We need to provide options for our clients. For those that are not, I guess, involved in mechanical, this is an export from a camel analysis of, you know, determining, I suppose, the space for a room, a facility, the purpose of that room, understanding the peak loads at different points in time, and then our engineers, you know, they work their magic in terms of trying to identify the best equipment selection for that facility. This here, love our engineers, is a typical zone markup. Now, at AECOM, we don't generally show too much of these zone plans, but they're generally used to, you know, show the team intent of where the equipment is supplying to what particular zones. And of course, you know, if there's any fire rated zones, you know, it's quite critical and so forth. But why are we going through and marking up this information? The software that we use already, and I'm sure you guys are in this space, is we can generate these zones already. So doubling up in a static type file where we can't track change or the information, it's starting to provide, I guess, get us into that double handling phase of a project. Engineer's best friend, Excel. And it was funny, we were talking to AECOM the other day, and they said Bluebeam was the other upcoming product. And Excel does do what I suppose most engineers want it to do, but the problem through a lot of these calculations that we found is, how do we track that change? How do we remove, I suppose, the responsibility of the individual and actually bestow that onto a project team for delivery? And you know, they go down to the detail of, you know, each terminal outlets, return air requirements, the requirements for outside air. You know, all these calculations are gone through iterations through Excel. But a lot of that can, again, be done with the technologies we have, I suppose. And the content is one of the biggest issues. This here is obviously an equipment. The pipe in this scenario here that I've selected, you know, it gives us the dimensions, the sizes, but more importantly, the flow of the chiller liquids through the equipment itself. And typically, we need to provide a schematic as well. So I guess the client's asking, we want a model, we want drawings, and we want schematics as well. So there's 3 levels of information that we need to manage and operate. I guess in the early adopters phase, models and drawings need to coincide. You know, that's pretty much the industry norm. Schematics, there's a bit of a, I guess, a disconnect there. But what we can do now is link those information together and now just purely rely on the model. So whatever's modeled and developed, it can coincide with both the drawings and the schematic information. You know, and that's essentially leading us to the end result, which is, you know, the ideal output for us from an engineering perspective. We then go into other levels of compliance and checking, you know, the pressure loss, the roughness, the PA counts and so forth for each bend. You know, we're going down to that nitty-gritty details when it gets to detailed design. So a lot of this is available, I suppose, in the technology that we use. And I suppose from a drafting perspective, we see more influence from an engineering background now further involved in just, I guess, the delivery of this work. And, you know, a lot of this information is already there. It's purely running some filters and some key legends, if you will, just to demonstrate and show this. And again, from a QA technical perspective, visually engaging for us makes it easier for our engineers to understand what the intent was from the start. We then go through to, you know, pressure loss, PA counts and so forth. And again, it's just easier for us to manage this. So I guess in summary for all of what we've been doing at AECOM, a lot of the engineering work, instead of having separate disconnect softwares, we're looking at how can we improve and get them more involved in the Revit space. And firstly, the software is quite important. Our engineers are quite competent in obviously what they do. Learning Revit's not the killer for them. It's just understanding when they should be entering information. The content, again, is always most important for us, consistency, like a few have mentioned before. And the skills and people in our business is obviously quite important for us. So, thank you.
Thanks, Quoc. Quite interested in the conversation there. So I'm actually not going to talk to you about anything new. I've been to 6 of these the forums before, and I've seen some amazing presentations, some really new technology, some really cool technology, and it's blown my mind. And I know there's some other brilliant presentations coming up in this forum, but I'm actually going to talk to you something about that's been around for a long time, apart from myself. Thank you, Brendan, for that reference there. And so let's talk about BIM. What is BIM? So best industry manufacturing. So that's my take on BIM. So I'm all about fabrication, and so I'm going to take you on a bit of a history lesson here. I hope you don't mind and oblige me. And I used to hate history, actually, by the way. But we wind the clock back to 1982, and a business called MAP, Micro Application Packages, was founded by a guy called Peter Barcock in Blackpool in the UK. That's the equivalent of, the UK's equivalent of Bondi Beach, I think, is it, Andy? Something like that, anyway. So way back then, they were leveraging technology such as, does anybody know what that top left thing is? Recognize that floppy disk? Put your hand up, show of hands if you can remember DOS. Remember DOS? Leave your hand up if you worked with a package that leveraged DOS. Wow, okay. I'm quite surprised how many people there are in the room that actually know what DOS is. Disk Operating System, I think that's what it stood for. Anyway, so yeah, you can see how the technology has changed. And MAP had this vision way back then of 3 Asians: innovation, automation, and standardization. So I'm going to talk to you about a file format called MAJ, which commonly in the industry is known as MAJ files, which can be leveraged in the industry for fabrication of ductwork predominantly. And so moving forward, we go to October the 20th, 2011, it says there, and that's when Autodesk procured MAP and the suite of products that you may or may not be familiar with, SMEP, CAD-MEP, and CAMDUCT. So that was a bit of a game changer, and we're actually very lucky, I'd say, to have Andy Robbins in the room, and Andy, we're chatting yesterday. The MAJ file format came into play in around about 1996. I think that's right, Andy, isn't it? Somewhere around about 1996. So that enabled the industry to leverage a workflow to manufacture ductwork from a model. So just to help you visualize that, this is the kind of workflow we're talking about. So we've got a CAD workstation. This is just for those that don't know about MAJ files. We're working in a 3D model in a CAD environment, and some of you may be familiar with the icons, the fabricatable icons, moving into the manufacture space. So we've gone from CAD-MEP to CAMDUCT. Just take note of the minimal detailing on the right-hand PDF. So there's minimal detailing because the information is in the model. It's in the MAJ file. So there's no need to detail your over-document the file, and we can go all the way through to a manufacture process to make the duct work. And I should have speeded this up a bit more. You'll notice he's moving pretty quick, this guy. I don't know whether he was when he comes on the screen. So he's a slick operator. And we end up with some duct work. So it wouldn't be a Dave Mangham presentation without a bit of video footage in it. So moving forward, in Revit 2000, the Revit 2016 product, some of you may remember the announcement that Autodesk made. I was actually in the room, I think, in AU 2015 when they announced that they'd implemented the fabrication suite, or the fabrication ITMs in Revit, which moves the goalposts. So that means that we can now leverage fabrication directly out of Revit. And I've got to come up with 3 more Ations: integration, collaboration, and coordination. This gives us the ability to do a lot more with fabricatable items in the Revit space. And just to give you an iteration of that, courtesy of AECOM this time. So there's a Revit model. Again, minimal detailing. Minimal detailing. And we're pushing the 3D ITMs out of Revit, and then we're moving into the CAM duct environment and processing those products in the CAM duct environment. So we also have now the ability to leverage project costing straight out of Revit using the MEP platform. So we can do that from bid stage right through to construction. So lean modeling equals lean manufacturing equals lean construction. I put that up there for a bit of an impact slide because there are some industries, unfortunately, who maybe didn't adopt modern technology and modern workflows. I think that tells a story, that picture. I don't need to say any more. So what's in it for me? What's the return on investment? Reduced drafting time, minimal detailing, reduced data input time, processing data, minimal RFIs, and direct costs from MEP. And that's the story of MAJs. Ian, over to you.
Thank you. Right, cheers, Dave. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name's Ian Pearse, and I'm the Digital Services Manager for Ellis Air, which I think in itself speaks volumes about how our industry is slowly changing and evolving. Because certainly if you go back a few years, you wouldn't find roles such as mine in companies such as ours, and I know there are others here that are similar. So I've divided along today to kind of share a bit of a story that we've been on, or a bit of a journey we've been on, leveraging the data, and also to kind of break step a little bit with a lot of the other presentations to say, well, what happens when we finish the project phase? We want to leverage all of the hard work that we've done into an operational phase. So I'm a bit of a newcomer, really, to all things BIM, but I have well over 20 years history in dealing with look, but not very good at presentation clickers. Okay, but over 20 years experience working with technology deployment in buildings. So the big draw card for me was when I came to the awareness that the BIM models that we work with are essentially a database, and a database that contains more than just X, Y, and Z coordinates. So if we've got a database, that means that I should be able to go and interrogate it and get lots of meaningful information. But if I'm going to go and start interrogating a database, it's really good if I have some rules, some structure, an idea of how I can go and acquire that data. And that's really what led me to the BIM-MEPAUS initiative in the first place. Because around the specifications, around the content and the shared parameters, it gives us that structure, a bit of a guidance about how we're actually going to go and start acquiring data from the models. So it kind of led me to the next point, where if we spend all of this hard work and money and resources creating these models, and we spend a lot of time in making sure we've got uniform data in there, why would we want to stop using them just because we got to the end of a project phase? Now, of course, there's been lots of talk over the years about using BIM for FM, and I've been looking at a lot of the solutions that are starting to come to the market now. But a lot of these seem to be about transposing from our original model into something else as a new starting point. And as someone that's quite data orientated, it seems a bit of a shame that we've already got this information contained in a central point. So why not just keep working with it, and there'll be some additional advantages. One of the key ones of those is we heard earlier on about hierarchy within data. and the fact that we can still keep using these models as a source of truth, not just during the project phase, but also into an FM and operational transition. And if we do that, then the initiative is still going to be there to help us maintain the quality and the information that we contain within it as we get moves and changes, the assets have moved. So maybe if we can get to this point and this way of thinking, maybe the next step is, can we start thinking about breaking this cycle of going, we finished the job, let's not extract all the information out of it and start putting it somewhere else. But let's come back to our humble model for a minute. So in a world of IT, we tend to think of this as our great library. And it's more of our static environment, because things are not really going to change that much over the life cycle, the 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Sure, assets will change. Sure, there'll be some moves and changes within the facility, but by and large, it's going to remain the same. But there are another range of databases coming through now in the world of facilities, and that's the world of IoT. And as we know, that's more of our dynamic environment. So if we've got these two types of synergies, two types of environments, wouldn't it be good if we could actually bring these environments together and start having them interact? Well, we thought so too. So that's exactly what we did. So by able to create a secure and flexible cloud environment, we're able to not only now have our origin, but create a destination in our safe playground where we can start getting the data to match up. But that's only part of it. If I've got an origin and I've got a destination, I now need to start talking about transportation, traffic, how am I going to move this information? And again, this is where a lot of these rules and structure that we can gain through the BIM-MEPAUS initiative allow us to have, as someone said earlier on, uniform naming conventions. Because it's a lot easier to go and find something if I already know the address. Likewise, on the other side of the fence in the IoT world, there's a similar initiative that's doing just as good work in the world of Project Haystack. Now, Project Haystack has for a while now been concentrating on being able to get APIs or cloud connectivity. And we've now got some great tools that again allow us to work with the shared parameters and the tags, different name but essentially the same thing, bring it through with platforms like Forge. So now we've got origin, destination, and we've got the ability to get the traffic flow. But what are we actually going to do with it? Well, if we look back at the BIM model that a lot of you will have spent the time building, we know we can go back there and see relationship to the spaces, the different type of spaces that have been created, types, size, and perhaps more importantly these days, the assets that are associated with them. You know, we work in a world now where asset-based maintenance is becoming more and more important, and being able to tie that back to our historical information is a great resource. On the IoT side, we know we've got energy information, asset performance from building management systems, energy management systems, emerging technologies now such as condition-based monitoring that will give us the performance of those assets through the life cycle. And then finally, occupancy. And we're not talking about occupancy as in, you know, the PIR sensors that we wave to get the lights to come back on. This is more now about the next generation of what shopping centres have been using for many years with people counters. Being able to say how many people actually came in and used that shopping centre against the total spend to work out what's going to be good shopping days, times to have sales, seasonal adjustments. We can do the same now with IoT to give a much better model of exactly how we're going to be using and interacting in these spaces. So when we bring them together, we can now start to tie the usage and the costs back to the relationship of those spaces. So we're actually going to start looking at the return of investment against how it was originally designed and how it was originally used. And again, some of the assets that were originally put in, you know, how did they fare over the 10, 15 years that we said they might work for or might not? And again, occupancy now is, I reckon, going to effectively become the new energy in the way in which we track the life cycle of a building. So for many years, we've been using energy management as an indicator of how well a building's been performing. Much the same way as when you drive your car. If the high temperature light comes on, or you know it's using more fuel than it has been, it gives you an indication that there's an issue. You don't necessarily know what the issue is yet, but it gives you an idea that there is one. With occupancy and being able to tie the day-to-day back to the original design of the spaces, energy efficiency should be the byproduct of design and usage usage efficiency. So this is what we start looking like when in use. So be able to tie back to a model and see assets and systems in context, along with the shared parameters. And the shared parameters now, the associated data, these are the tech data sheets and the commissioning sheets. We want to kind of get away from this disparate information and documentation. The ability to tie these back to the haystack model, where our IoT information is coming through. Being able to do the occupancy modelling, to be actually see how we're using and interacting with the spaces. You know, we're living in a world now with hot desking, flexible working hours, smart offices. Being able to understand how people move and use and operate the building will start to give us more information about what needs to be done in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And I just wanted to kind of stress that this is not designed to be an operational head end or dashboard. There are a lot of great companies that already make those for day-to-day operation, and they're very important. The information that we're collecting here may not be needed for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the track. But when you want to come to make informed decisions about what's next for the building, do I need to have the same spaces as we originally set out and designed 5 years ago? This is where this will really come into play. So I can possibly leave with just 3 points. The first is that the early choices we make in how we're going to structure data in a project can actually have a profound effect, not just for the life of the project, but over the 30, 40 years life cycle of the building, because it's very hard to go back and change. The fact that the initiative is only going to mature and get stronger. So if we're working with the right formats and the right kind of databases, then that initiative is still going to be around to make sure we can maintain a quality around that data. And then finally, if we're accepting that this isn't the future anymore, it's the present, then the questions we can probably start asking that and those of our customers is, what is the information that they actually need or will better strengthen their decision making? Because we can now do it a lot better than just reading some spreadsheets. All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Adam Sheether from Bad Monkeys. We are Bad Monkeys. We do computational design, software development, data analytics, things like that. So this is going to be pretty short and sweet. I'm not going to yabber on too long. So basically about a week and a half ago, A2K came to us and went, we need this tool and we need it ready for BIM-MEPAUS. And so if any Revit users, just hands on the ground, MEP guys, we've just been punching away a bunch of enhancements that A2K are going to be releasing in September. So where we're at is for typical ducts and pipes, we've got a split routing tool, so it'll automatically split any run by specific sizes. Nice renumber tool, and then a multi-tag tool as well. So I'll be presenting this live in detail, so come tomorrow at 8 if you're keen to see more of it, and I'll show you how it breaks, show you how it does work in most cases. I might even crash Revit once or twice, so it should be fun, but a bit more features. So really quick, I'll just give you an overview. So one of the issues that people have a lot is just picking runs and being able to split ducts by a typical length, right? This is pretty standard. And then normally you want your unions all in there too, and you just want to be able to set your size, set the actual gasket length or cut length, and be able to split the duct apart. So So again, nice and simple ways to split all the runs that you need to. Second one we got renumber. So again, if you're ever adding or cutting or adding new pieces of duct, this will allow you to pick the parameter, set your prefixes and suffixes, and number and renumber routes, individual elements, and that sort of thing. So again, nice and easy if you need to change these. And probably the coolest one that we got is this next one, which is the multi-tagger. So this allows you to create what's called a tag configuration. Then you can store different tags and their positions in relation to the duct. So center to center, top right of duct, bottom left of duct, all your different tags that you guys normally have to place. And this tool in particular, unlike the split tool, because fabrication already has it, this works for pipes, ducts, and fabrication parts, both mech and pipe work. So again, for these guys who probably do this quite a lot, where you're just clicking these runs over and over again and moving these tags, you can set up multiple different configurations for plans, sections. It's really up to you. You can use your own tags. You don't have to use any of the stuff that's in here. And this tool's for the low fee of $35,000 a month. No, I don't know. I think it's, I don't know. Are we allowed to say how much it's going to be? TBC, apparently. But if you're interested in more, we can go through the interfaces. There's obviously much prettier interfaces for the settings of this stuff. So that's it for me, guys.
Thanks, guys. We've got a bit of time. That was some great presentations, some great points made there. So thank you guys for that today. Are there any questions for the guys? If we've got a bit of time, we've got some mics up the back. We're just bringing down.
We're trying to catch up time, please.
Yeah, you've done very well. Yeah, it's getting closer to beer o'clock, so it's important to do that. Yeah. We've got a mic just coming. Do you guys want to come up?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably better if you guys answer that than me.
No, you can answer it.
Hi, yeah, Andreas Vassiliou here from TFSA. I'm not really sure what PowerCAD is. I'm not sure what the connection is with PowerCAD and Revit and that sort of thing, so probably some of the others might know, but if you could explain that to me, how it works.
Yeah, I can probably talk quickly on that. So, and I guess definitely if you want to know more, come tomorrow morning if you're around, because we'll be going into it in more detail, but I'm probably not going to do it justice. Is Adrian in the room? But PowerCAD is a electrical design tool, basically, that works, well, historically it's worked with AutoCAD for 30 odd years, or thereabouts, but it now has an integration into Revit. So it does cable sizing and does all of your systems and things like that, and the connections. And so basically what we're doing is we've been working with them to align the BIM-MEPAUS content, the BIM-MEPAUS families, and their parameters and the way that they function and the way that they join systems in Revit to join and integrate into the PowerCAD. So it's an add-on to Revit, and it opens up a window, and then you can start to do things like your schematics and things, and connect them up, and then push that information back into the model, and sort of two ways. You don't look. You don't. Adrian will probably say yes. No, you don't have to have PowerCAD. But look, definitely, you probably get a lot more of your questions answered tomorrow morning. So definitely come and ask the questions tomorrow.
Just to add to that as well, and I think Shannon Warwick may have touched on it this morning. We're looking at getting PowerCAD to auto size cable trays. So and fabrication cable trays, not Revit family cable trays. We believe that the functionality of fabrication cable trays in Revit is much better than RFAs. So we're currently in the throes of not to promote this, to get that design from cable sizing to the actual sizing of the cable trays in the model, automating.